I met Leonard, and I had the pleasure to work with him over the course of several years and months. But the lucky thing is that Elizabeth McQueen, who is the sculptor who did the bust of Leonard out here, was my friend, and art friend as well. So we spent a lot of time with Leonard, and especially while she was doing the bust of Leonard. And we also had a lot of fun, so you're going to see another side that was just so much fun, because we were having so much fun as artisans together with Leonard. And I think Leonard was about 93 at the time. But you would never think that Leonard was 93, because his energy and his passion and his love for life was just so abundant that there was nothing that we couldn't discuss. But I will say about Leonard that everything about Leonard was art. As you can see, the history of his life. And Reba, I did get to meet her. She had already passed on a couple of years before. And, I wanted to pass something around to you to give you a little glimpse of how it felt to be a student of Leonard. And just like she was saying earlier, Leonard was on a very regimented schedule, and he kept his life that way, all that I knew of him. Although we were off having fun and doing things, he would take his nap religiously every afternoon at 2:30 for 20 minutes. But he was upstairs with Whiskers. I don't know if you remember that cat before Nobby, or Nobby during the time of Nobby. But Whiskers was never allowed out of the bedroom upstairs. So we all were in great fear. If we opened the door to let Whiskers out, we would instantly be sent home. And when you pass that around, not only maybe just give some thought as to what you're not only looking at, but what you're feeling at the same time, and what you're actually holding. Because Leonard didn't miss one thing. I mean, if you were talking, he was writing. If you were singing, he was painting or making music, and all the time talking about art. I don't remember one conversation that we ever had that did not get transformed into new art. So he was 100% a teacher, and more so. So I learned a lot within a short period of time with Leonard, and he was just a great mentor and someone who had a passion for life that trained my eye also to notice the smallest things. And I pass this around because one of the things that he does talk about in one of his books is a piece of paper that was flying around in Paris years ago. And he made a collage of that. But when we were in the studio, he had like 4 big boxes of material that he had collected over his lifetime. We were only allowed one to play around in one box. And we were over here looking like, oh, we want all of this. He said, no, absolutely, we cannot have that. So what I did get, I was very excited to get. So, but the thing that I want to say about the collage that I heard about there is that small things become big things over time. And you're holding a 113-year-old that he lived a life. To me, that's totally amazing. And to get to have that experience with him at over 90. So along with that, he, like I said, transformed everything into a work of art. And some things he did that I didn't expect him to do. For example, we played chess. Leonard and I played chess. I like chess. And I made him a chessboard because his chessboard was a little worn over years. So I made him a chessboard. And then I noticed that he had taken the chessboard And this is the chessboard that I painted for him. Because in '05, you could barely find, you can find chessboards around here, but not one that you can, that's portable. And I didn't know this until I looked in the book, and I thought, oh gosh, Leonard, I didn't know you were going to take that and make it into a collage, but that's what he did. If he saw something that was interesting to him, he would put it in a collage. And anything that you would bring him, it could be just a sunflower one day, and he would be painting it. So there was a lot of things about Leonard that his love for books, his writing. I was fortunate enough, this is an out-of-print book that I highly recommend it. It's Painting and Understanding Abstract Art. He was able to break complex things down into simple language. And he could also talk very personal about himself as an artist and his process as an art. And I would like to read one passage that he always, in the summing up of this book, that how I remember Leonard always. He would notice, like I said, the smallest of things and see it in an artistic way. So, remember the delights of earlier years when, as a child, you first reacted to the bright colors of the flowers and the glint of silver tinsel, or searched for smooth and magic pebbles, wet and shiny at the water's edge. Something of this delight is waiting for you in paintings if you can learn to accept from another sensitive and gifted human being, trained and experienced in expressing the truths of his inner feelings in terms of paint with line, color, shape, and form. That's the kind of writer he was, that's the kind of person he was. He would just talk like that and could write it into form and make it so palatable for everybody who was around. So, and he did have 3 precepts about art, and that was structure, the unity of conception, and consistency of vision. And I think more than anything, the consistency of vision was really important to me, because as you walk around town, especially in Mexico, there's so much material, and we sometimes take for granted all of these things, but when you really look at Leonard's collages, you see the inside part of Leonard that was always noticing everything, no matter how small it was.
Thank you, Marilyn. I can say from my own perspective on Maria Monaner, I met Beverly first bringing a tour guide to buy Leonard in about, I think Leonard was 96. We brought him, as a group, we brought him 97 roses on his 97th, 98 on his 99th, again 99. And at 100, we split it up between 5 vases. And my sons and Alfredo, who worked with him, and Michael, his nephew, we lined him up in front of them. At this point, he was lying in bed, and he still grabbed my hand. Beverly even told me that, oh no, he doesn't really know what's going on. He pulled me down and gave me a kiss on the lips, so I know there's no way that he doesn't know what's going on. And that was November 7th. That evening, there was an absolutely beautiful celebration in the theater here in San Miguel, packed to the gills, and his wonderful students, Hermanos Aguascalientes, played and played for him and serenaded him. He was sitting in his wheelchair in the window on the left, and the musicians came down. My boys carried him in the wheelchair and carried him back out again. And then I said to Debbie, you know, he's lasted 100 because you told him to. And if any of you knew Betty, we all followed her orders and enjoyed it with the Ricky Booth. And I said to her, you know, you have to just tell him it's okay. Because now that he's not waiting, he's not, you know, that was just the last maybe 2 months. Let him go with dignity and humility and You know, this is just too tough hanging up. Oh no, I could never tell him that. I could never, ever tell Leonard that it's okay if he goes. When you think about it, you're the boss, and he will follow your orders. So we went up there on the Tuesday, I think it was, with Dr. Kiros. And Dr. Kiros, you know, Beverly said, I don't think he really knows what we're talking about. I said, I think he knows everything. And Dr. Kiros said, you know, there's not really any reason to keep giving him this heart medicine and this oxygen up the nose, which obviously drove him nuts. And, you know, at what point can you let things just go naturally? So it was the hardest for Betty, and we talked with her for quite some time. And Kiros was full of heart at that moment. He's left us now as well. And he lasted 1 more day, and the next morning, Beth called, okay, Leonard's left. And that's his closing. So my role in a lot of all of that was helping him with his will, and making sure that everything was going to be followed through, taking Beverly to the notary to go through all of these details. And then, of course, there were years of probate in Canada, and then one day Betty called me and said, well, they want us to start the will here. So we went to see the notary, and he said, well, you've got 15 days to hand in the inventory. And I said to him, can you pretend we didn't have this meeting? Because I knew the notary. Please, let's just forget that you read this. You must come to the house and see what that entails. And maybe you could give me a little time to actually do that. So sure enough, our lovely notary number 2 and his wife came over and looked at all of this and said, okay, why don't you just take a couple months, and when you're ready, call me. So then, that day, I had everything typed up, and everything looked at, and everything counted. Everything needed to have a value. And I said to Betty, you know, the most valuable thing is the title of this property. So we better bring in that, because that's inventory. Well, where on earth would I find that? So we're not going to go until we find that, because that's number 1 for San Miguel. So a couple days later, she called me and said, well, I think I found it. Okay. So we get in the car and we drive over there, and he asks immediately for the title, and she hands over this file. The whole room started to smell like, in Canada we call it dittos, like in school, those blue things that turned like this. He said, well, who is Reva? Reva owns half of all of this. So where is she? Well, she's dead. Well, where's her death certificate? Well, I don't know. So then comes this. I go up to the registry office with Leonard's will, with Leonard's death certificate, and some previous will we thought we found with Reva's, and asked for a death certificate. Of course, Beverly didn't remember where this home was, where she died in Querétaro, didn't remember any address, didn't remember any name. So I stood there in that registry office and kept telling them, you know, these people contributed everything to San Miguel, and their ashes are in the graveyard. There is no way that we can just tell them that there's no death certificate for them. We can't have ashes in the graveyard here without any registration. And I just stood there and just held the floor for about 2 hours before finally they went and dug out these big books, and they wouldn't turn them around for them. And then finally they handed me the books as well. And we found this death certificate to bring it in to the notary's office. So, just share that with you. But of course, Reva also, I think, the years that she was sort of losing it, she kept going and doing another will with different notaries. It all said the same thing. But it took a very long time. And I'm telling you all of this because people wonder, where is the house? Why is it still there? What's happened with everything? Where is it all going? It took a lot of time. Then we had 2 years of COVID, and now here we are, enthusiastically finally showing some of what they brought us.
Leonard had recently discovered that he was a she, or she was a he. And whatever the case. Now we needed a lot of TLC from Leonard. Around 11 o'clock a.m. to 2 p.m., Leonard would be at his easel, now set up in the living room. He used to paint in his studio, but he liked the warmth and being closer to people. He would paint until about 2, until Beverly Silverman, Reba's sister-in-law, and Goldie's aunt, I believe, and an excellent cook, would serve a full comida. This would consist of soup, salad, main course, and a dessert. Leonard would sit at the head of the table and would pick things out of the newspaper to discuss with us, as well as topics, cultural topics such as art and literature, poetry, whatever. If the politics got too sensitive, as they did for me following 9/11, he promptly stopped discussing the subject and then began reading out our horoscopes instead, always putting his own interpretation on the stars, such as for me. Margot. Today, the sign of Cancer the Crown indicates that you should attempt to do a lot more of your own painting, as well as graphic design, and that there is a brilliant friend and mentor who will help you. That would have been lunch over, we would all go and view his latest painting. Sometimes we get into interesting art subjects at this point. I remember one conversation when we discussed the merits of the color yellow for almost an hour. This was possible. Or the fact that every painting should have a touch of red. Then Leonard would be truly ready for his afternoon siesta. 3 p.m. While Leonard was taking his siesta, the house would become very quiet, as if everyone was dozing as well. Nobby would have found a beam of sunlight and would be snoozing in the corner. 5:30 p.m. Often visitors, students, friends, and collectors would arrive at the house, and Beverly would start her wonderful version of hospitality with drinking booths and a complex selection of botanicals. Leonard would emerge elegantly and sartorially dressed, sometimes with a beret, an ascot, or a cool pair of socks. He would be absolutely in his element and in China, everyone. His favorite spot to sit was on the sofa, where he could be surrounded by women who loved him. He permitted himself a tot of round water, a habit from his Navy days. 7 p.m. Visitors mostly departed. Leonard's supper would normally consist of a slice of cake and another tot of rum. A good diet, as proven by his long life of 100 years. 8 p.m. Leonard would be off to bed to recharge for another day of art and passionate living. Wonderful memories of an exceptional man and artist. Thank you.
And on that note, I would like to once again give a hand to Reba's lovely niece, Goldie, who's going to have a few last things to say for the closing of this exhibition, which is today at 5 o'clock. Goldie Sherman.
Well, anybody, I'm going to be speaking on behalf of my sister Nancy, who's a trustee, my cousin Dan, who's a trustee, and Marina, who's been on the team for many, many years, Viridiana Gutierrez, who was our art director, Kira Boland, who also was the initial curator, just saying deep gratitude for everybody who's come, who's been interested, who has wandered around. During this month, I've had the privilege, you might say, or it could be something else, to meet so many people from all walks of life. It's been exhausting, but an amazing journey. I have met artists who knew Leonard and Riva, people who've been to their home. I've met people who had no idea who they were. I've had family members in the photos of Riva in the funeral procession. This woman came in with her whole extended family, pointing to, here I am as the niece of Elodia. And that was really at the beginning, and it was really a tremendous experience. And just yesterday, Alicia, who was the daughter of their maid, Carmen, and she came in yesterday with her 2 children. That was pretty emotional. So what I really gleaned from my aunt and uncle, and also I think my life and all of our lives, I think if we look at all of our lives and see all the moments, we all have a lifetime of moments, and they're happy and they're sad as well. We all make tiny choices and bigger choices that, create our destinies. And I really reflect on the destiny of my aunt and uncle and all of those difficult choices that they made, or maybe not, to just be adventuresome and arrive here in San Miguel. I also really understand from my aunt and uncle's life, as well as my life, it's messy, it's imperfect, as well as glorious and awe-inspiring. And if we can show up and do our best and try to enjoy the ride, then we've really lived a lifetime that can speak, and we all give our legacies. There's also they love poetry. I love poetry. Mary Oliver, I don't know if you know Mary Oliver. She's a very well-known American poet. I just think that she is brilliant, plugged into something spiritual or something that's beyond our, the great mystery. And she said, what might you do with your one and wild, precious life? So we can see what Riva and Leonard did with their one wild and precious life, and maybe we all reflect on our one wild and precious lives that we all have to contribute. We're all contributing all the time. The last words to Leonard that he wrote to Riva. I think this really sums up their lives for me. So in the beautiful book that you put together, Margot, he writes, for Riva, with love to my companion, devoted wife, and artist photographer, with memories of nearly 70 years together, pursuing our mutual creative aspirations. Your love and compassion for humanity, as evoked in your work, particularly the young mothers, the children, and the elderly, is truly extraordinary. Thank you, Riva, for your years of sensitive feeling and love of life, and for this brave recording from your heart as honest photographic images, precious in this mad world